Hi, we're back again. This is episode 19 in the continuing story of Carol, my wife, and myself's visit to all 30 current Major League ballparks. Today's story is going to focus on San Francisco and specifically AT&T Park as we visited it during 2016. It has since become Oracle Park. And as I normally do, I get decked out for each one of these episodes with colors from the game. And today's colors are black and orange for the Giants. I'll start with my cap, which is a cap that I think you've seen before if you've watched all these episodes. It's for the New York Giants. And I got it at AT&T Park because the script is the same as for my favorite Mets. The colors here are black and orange, however. And for those of you familiar with the Mets, you'll know the colors are royal blue and orange. And where did they get those colors? Well, they got the orange and they got the script from the New York Giants as they departed New York for San Francisco. And they got the royal blue from the Brooklyn Dodgers when they departed for Los Angeles. My windbreaker jacket, which is a favorite for when I'm out walking on my daily constitutional, is a San Francisco Giants, still black and orange, as you might expect. And now we're going to take a slight break so I can remove my windbreaker and reveal my Cubs shirt. Okay, back now with my polo featuring the Chicago Cubs. And that's who played the game today, the Cubs and the Giants. I have several polos, and you'll see more of them as we proceed through the remaining half or so of the episodes which I have yet to complete. Now, my background, like many of the other backgrounds that I attempt, is focused on something unique from AT&T Park. Well, AT&T Park in the outfield, and you can see way up in the corner there, just the tippy top of the Coke bottle that is right next to this mitt, which is behind me. And this mitt has three fingers rather than what you might expect in a typical mitt for four fingers. Well, why three? I tried to do some research, and there's, I guess, a school of thought that some prefer to keep one finger outside the mitt for control and improved fielding. Others prefer to share two fingers in one of the sleeves. So I'm not really sure exactly why there are three rather than four fingers. The answer didn't seem clear to me. So with that, we're going to move to the slide that covers our visit to San Francisco. All right. Now let me move me to a more convenient spot, maybe over here. Yep, that'll work. So that we can see all the images that I have here. And I think for those of you who have been following along with all of our episodes, you'll note that the deeper we get into the episodes, the more crowded these slides become. I tend to have quite a story to tell about each of these stops. And as such, I'm inclined to try and cram as many photos as we can here. Please keep in mind that you can get to these slides not just from the YouTube recording, but also there is a PDF of these slides out there on Dropbox that is available. Okay, now this is episode 19. Episode 19 follows our episode 18, which was talking about the game for the Seattle Mariners a little bit earlier in May. This was our 40th anniversary, wedding anniversary trip for my wife, Carol, and myself. And for those of you who have watched episode 18, you'll know that what we did was we flew to Seattle, then we drove down the Pacific coast from Seattle to San Francisco, stopping at some attractions along the way in both Washington and in Oregon. In California, on our way to San Francisco, we did stop and enjoy some of the redwoods along the way. But we came into San Francisco on one of the two bridges. I'm going to skip down to this bullet first. This is a picture Carol took as we were driving into San Francisco across the Golden Gate. So that is one of the two bridges that were built during the 1930s in San Francisco. The other one is over here in the lower right. That's part of the Oakland Bay Bridge that takes San Francisco over to Oakland. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we later pick up and go to Oakland's Coliseum. Okay. Typically, each one of these slides has two or more active links. Keep in mind the box score is available here, that anything in that white area will get you to a detailed box score. And what these links are over on the left with various bullets are links to photographs that are over and above the ones that I've crammed into this particular slide. Okay, let's start going through some of the bullets on this slide. First, we have a quote. "The coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco." Anybody tell me who that quote is? Well, I believe it's attributed to Mark Twain. And the reason I put the quote there is all about something that occurred at the ballpark. You can see my wife here, and she's a little bit bundled up. I think the temperature was actually in the 50s, but it was quite breezy, quite windy, and she was all bundled up. You can see she has gloves on. She at least has one or two sweatshirts, sweaters on, and then she's got her jacket, and she's consuming some hot chocolate there. So she was typically a little bit chilly at this particular game. However, what's ironic is, as the bullet says, the guy behind her only had a t-shirt on. Now, I think he was on his fifth beer or so. So maybe that had something to do with his warmth. And before we get into some of the rest of the bullets, I'm going to try and scan this slide and talk to a few of the images that relate to the ballpark. We took a field tour. It's referred to right here. One of the interesting shots from that was right here. That's from the ground level, right in the Giants dugout. And you can see my wife at the far end of that particular image. Another image from the field level was some kind fan took a picture of the two of us from the dugout, and that's right there. So another interesting image is obviously a longtime fan here, just like my ball cap, which you see right here again. And I've talked to you about both the colors and the script for the Mets. Here's a guy who's, I guess, got an affection for the 1951 New York Giants, and he's very proudly indicating that there. Let's see. This is another image of that three-fingered glove that is my backdrop for the Zoom zoom image that you see right behind me. This is a little bit later in the game where it was actually an evening game, and during May it was getting dark by the time the game was over. And there's the Coke bottle that I talked about a little bit earlier. Okay, those are just a couple of shots. Well, maybe here's another one. This is Levi's Landing, which is in right field. It's related to this comment, McCovey's Cove. McCovey, of course, was a very powerful left-handed hitter, and he is enshrined with this area of the ballpark. For left-handers today, when they get a hold of a ball and hit a home run over right field, the fence there, if it's strong enough, it will actually make it into the bay there. And there are in McCovey Cove, there are people in small craft that just hang out there in the hopes that somebody is going to crack the next homer. And I'm pretty sure there's a tally that is kept. It's hard for me to see with sunglasses or whatever, but I think there's a tally on Levi's Landing that keeps track of the number that actually hit the cove. Okay, more things about the ballpark. I indicate some tributes to Willie Mays, and there's three, I think, images I want to call your attention to there. First, this image of Willie Mays outside the park with a plaque that is to his credit. Then here, I believe, is the Say Hey Kid. And I may actually have two of those images here. We'll have to maybe address that by the time we save the file out to the PDF. But Willie's nickname was the Say Hey Kid, and we had a great in-depth story about Willie and many of the other people who came into the major leagues in and around 1954. A great book, 1954. I believe it talks about Hank Aaron as well. So that's a tribute to Willie Mays. Additionally, there's a tribute to the very powerful pitcher Juan Marichal, who had quite the leg kick there. And you can see a nice shot of the statue outside the park, a tribute to him. Here, you can see, and I believe this plaque may actually be along this area in between the right field fence and the bay right there in McCovey Cove, a tribute to Barry Bonds and his 760 or so home runs. Okay, as is the case, I get a sausage, kielbasa, or whatever at each of the games. And here you can see I'm enjoying my San Francisco Giants sausage, kielbasa right there. And for those of you who just watched the Seattle episode, you'll know that I talked about visiting Tillamook, and I said that's a city or a town in Oregon where it's rumored there's more cows than people. And that's the sweatshirt that I bought from Tillamook that has more cows than people on my breast pocket area right there. Can't see it because of the kielbasa. Okay, so I think I've talked about many of the images of the ballpark. Let me say a thing or two about the game. This was a game, as the note says, that Jake Arrieta pitched for the Cubs, and he was dominant. There was a total of 17 hits. The vast majority, 11 of them, were by the Cubs. Cubs had, I think, three homers, accounting for six or so runs. They scored five in the second, and it was a Cubs game all throughout. So a dominant Cubs win, and they had the better record coming into the game, so that might have been what you would have expected. But a good game, a chilly game. It was a little bit windy, but that didn't matter. Okay, now other things that we did in San Francisco while we were on this particular trip is we went to the Contemporary Jewish Museum, and you can see a link here for photos from that visit. And a lot of the artifacts that were at that particular museum were right up my alley. There was a tribute to Bill Graham, not Billy Graham, the evangelist, but rather Bill Graham, the promoter of several rock groups, including, I guess you can see here, the Grateful Dead. But we enjoyed, or I particularly enjoyed, all the tribute at that museum. And here's one of the posters that you can see focusing on a concert by Procol Harum and Pink Floyd, etc. So that was a great museum to stop in, and I urge you to check out some of the photos there. Another museum that we enjoyed while we were in San Francisco, I didn't show you some of the what was inside the museum, but the architecture is quite beautiful. And that's the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, a wonderful place to stop in as well. One other thing that relates a little bit to the Grateful Dead is Haight-Ashbury. This building has a placard, if you take a look at the image, that is right at the corner of Haight and Ashbury. That's where the name comes from. But that is an area where Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, and many other bands, Quicksilver, Messenger Service, for example, hung out during the late 60s. I've talked about the two bridges from the 1930s. We also enjoyed Alcatraz. You can see an image here as we were nearing Alcatraz Island, of course, the famed prison that was there. And we enjoyed eating again very, very much while we were in San Francisco. And we ate at a restaurant called Farallon, which was one of the, at the time, top-rated San Francisco restaurants. And while we were there, I had asked if the chef who was referred to in the cookbook could write a inscription in a cookbook and send it to us. And indeed, he did follow up. That cover page from that cookbook is here, and it indicates keep cooking with all those senses from the chef that was at Farallon at that time. Now, other things that we did was we strolled along the Embarcadero, and that takes you down to Fisherman's Wharf, gets you in touch with many of the cable cars as well. And I'll indicate that one of the buildings that we checked out a little bit was the ferry building, and that's this structure right here. And there is a book that I have since read about the ferry building because it talks a lot about urban renewal, both things to do and things not to do with regard to urban renewal. But the ferry building was originally put in place as a portal for those entering the city of San Francisco by water. So it served its purpose heavily when there was a lot of water traffic coming into San Francisco. Well, over the years, of course, that changed now with air travel and everything. So the ferry building has gone through a bit of an evolution itself, and at times, so has the city. One of the interesting things that I remember from the book is they basically put an expressway that isolated the ferry building on one side of the expressway in a very unattractive way. And they have subsequently taken that expressway down. But interesting story about kind of urban renewal and the city of San Francisco as well. Okay, we're nearing the end here. I have a picture of Coit Tower from some of our walkabouts here. And just as I indicated walkabouts, you can see many more photos that we have there. So I'm very pleased to have now brought you episode 19. We'll stay tuned for episode 20, which will be shortly on the horizon. I will stop sharing. I will thank you again for your attention, and I will look forward to being with you shortly for our next episode.